Hey humans, how's it going? Susan Ruth here. Thanks for listening to another episode of Hey Human Podcast. This is episode 462, and my guest is Jordan Ochel. Born deaf, Jordan was raised in the oralist tradition without sign language, which he'll explain more about in this episode. Jordan and I met in Waco at the film festival there, where the film he wrote and directed, Healing Hands, won Best Student Short Film and Best Family Short. The film is based on his experiences as a deaf child, including a night when he was taken as a child to a Benny Hinn miracle crusade to be healed from his deafness. I met him at the awards show of the film festival, and I just loved his vibe, and we started chatting, and he was very gracious to come on the show. I need to say my vocal cord is healing. I sound very scratchy. It's a process. For those who don't know, I was born with a paralyzed right vocal cord, and Dr. Johns here at Keck Medical Center in Los Angeles is fantastic, and he is working to help make the left one not have to work so hard by doing stuff to the right one to fatten it up. It will never move, but maybe we make the left one not have to work so hard. Anyway, that's why I'm scratchy voiced and will be for quite a while, so bear with me on the healing journey. General stuff, check out Hey Human Podcast for links and to learn more about my guests in the show. Check out SusanRuth.com to learn more about me and my other artistic endeavors. Follow Susan Ruthism on social media and find my music on Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music, wherever you get your music. Rate, review, and subscribe to Hey Human Podcast anywhere you get your podcasts. And actually wanted to say, guess what? Blurby Podcasts made Hey Human its podcast of the month. So thank you to y'all for that. And be well, take care, be kind. And here we go. Jordan Ochel, welcome to Hey Human.
Thank you so much, Susan. Good to see you again.
It's so good to see you. We met at Waco at the Independent Film Festival, and I was so delighted to be sitting next to you because you kept winning awards, and it was so exciting.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, it was certainly humbling, surprising. I was just touched by it. So I was honored to have you sit next to me.
It couldn't have happened to a nicer person. So I was thrilled for you. Let's a little bit dig into you before we get into what you do now, who you are, where were you raised up? What was your family life like? How did that shape you?
I am a native Texan. I was born in the Austin area, grew up there. I had a couple, 2.5 years as a child where I lived in Illinois. So I've experienced the winters of the North, but my family moved back down when I was 5 or 6. You know, I've been living here most of my life. My wife is from Waco, so she and I have lived here for the last, 12, 15 years, something like that. I can't count anymore. So I've called Waco home since then. As far as family life, I've had a very loving family. My parents live here in town, and my wife's parents live here in town, which is really helpful raising our daughter. It's good to have that extra help.
Do you have siblings?
I have one brother. I love him to death. He's a year and a half younger. He and his family live in Europe right now. They've been living in Switzerland, but they're moving right now to Germany. So excited for them. They're having a great time.
Were you born with hearing difficulty? Were you a hearing child that then developed some? How did that work out?
Yeah, so I was born deaf. My parents didn't know it. And that's deaf with a lowercase d. I was raised in what's called the sort of like the oralist tradition. It's not really a tradition, but the oralist way of kind of living with deafness, which is that you are taught to speak and listen with hearing aids, with hearing devices, as opposed to being taught sign language. And that's really common, for better or worse. In my opinion, I think all deaf and hard of hearing children should be given the opportunity to learn both, because ASL American Sign Language is made for people like us. And there's a whole culture and community of capital T deaf people. Their primary language is ASL. So I wasn't blessed with that opportunity. But yeah, my parents didn't know that I was deaf for the first year and a half of life. They just thought I was struggling to speak or understand what was being said. It wasn't until my dad walked in after I was napping in my crib, and I was facing the wall away from the door, and he said my name, and I didn't turn around, and he stepped closer and said it again, and about 4 or 5 different times until he was right next to my ear. And that's when I noticed him. They took me to be seen by an audiologist, was fitted with hearing aids, and they were told, that it was dangerous for me to hit my head because I could lose my hearing more. They were told that, it was better to raise me to learn how to speak English as opposed to ASL. And because of all this, there was a real stigma around it, a real sense of fear in my parents. And, they wanted nothing more but the best give me the best life possible. So that led to my dad, who was told by a friend about a famous televangelist named Benny Hinn, goes around and has a big faith healing, we'll call it a show. They took me to that, and I was selected as one of the quote unquote healing participants to come up on stage at age 5. And there were over 10,000 people wanting me to be healed. And so I lied and said that I was healed because I didn't know what else to do. And then the lie was up later that night. And so that's what inspired my film that was at Waco Indie this year. It wasn't until I started making that film that I really felt the healing power of community, people coming together to help me tell this story. And it no longer feels like my story. It feels like the character's story. And it's just amazing what art can do.
As a kid, did you feel broken? Especially since everyone's trying to say, no, you have to talk or you have to pretend.
Yeah, I definitely, as a kid, I wouldn't have known to verbalize it as feeling broken, but I definitely did feel that way. Even today, I don't feel broken anymore, but even today, there's a stigma because my parents, my in-laws, they've hesitated and resisted getting hearing aids when they really needed it. There's still a sense of stigma in our culture about hearing loss in their case, deafness in other cases, when there really shouldn't be any shame. There's no difference between hearing aids and glasses for most people. So it's just something that aids in one of your 5 senses. So
I see that with my own parents and even friends. And there's this idea that somehow, again, I use the word broken, but it's such a good analogy. If you can't see well, you get glasses.
Yeah. I think what being deaf or hard of hearing, in my opinion, living this life has taught me is that there's more than one way to live a perfectly normal, beautiful, healthy life, and it might not look like the quote unquote average person, but that doesn't mean I'm not living the life I was meant to live or living a life that I can enjoy living. In fact, there are many benefits, in my opinion, to the way that I live life. I go to sleep and take my hearing aids out. I don't hear anything. No sound. It's wonderful. I don't know how people go to sleep hearing all the noises that they hear. I couldn't do it. So there are benefits to it as well.
Yeah, I could understand that desire to shut out the world.
Yeah, especially in the world today, it can be helpful.
Do you speak sign language now?
I don't. I've attempted to learn more recently, and then we had a child, and life kind of got away from us. And it's been on my bucket list to learn it more fluently. I would love to learn from someone who is deaf and can teach me directly. Learning directly from someone who that is their first language. I hope to pay for lessons at some point.
On TikTok, I've noticed a swell of deaf content creators or content creators who can't speak, who do I've seen American Sign Language and I've seen British Sign Language. I don't know how much different they are. I assume every country has their own language as one would. It's great. It's great to see that because it tells me that it is becoming more normalized and more in the zeitgeist. And like you would go to school. I wish I'd had that option as a kid. If there had been sign language, what a cool option.
Absolutely.
It's up this whole other world, like any language. I am curious, as a person who is completely deaf, how do you learn to make the words and the sounds? How much do your hearing aids articulate sound around you?
Yeah. So thanks for that question. Something that I think people don't often realize because they wouldn't have much context to realize it is that just like any other way of living, there's a spectrum, right? I happen to be somebody that my deafness is pretty severe to profound. I have profound deafness in my left ear and severe to profound in my right. Pretty much close to almost no hearing without hearing aids. In fact, no hearing whatsoever in my left ear without a hearing aid, basically. And yet I get comments all the time that I sound like I'm not deaf. And that comes across, I take it as a compliment from their perspective and receive that in the way that they mean it. But I must have some mimicking ability. I don't know. I worked really hard as a child I asked my mom to tell me, like, when am I saying a word? Like, what part of the word doesn't sound right? And I would just practice until I almost memorized how it felt to say the words, quote unquote, correctly. So it's deceptive. My speaking is deceptive for people because it doesn't actually match my hearing loss or deafness from an audiologist perspective. Whenever I get a new audiologist, they do the hearing test on me, they're always surprised because they weren't expecting it to be that profound. There are people with less deafness than I have, and they don't speak as well as I do. So like all of this is a spectrum. And at the end of the day, from my perspective, we're all just trying to communicate. And I think sometimes people get hung up on the way that they sound or the way that someone else sounds, and not enough on listening to what they're trying to say and seeing who they really are,
Yeah.
Like you're doing, which is wonderful.
Thanks. When I speak, I have a voice that's happening in my head as well as a voice that's being projected outward. And as someone who can't hear, do you also, and this may be the most ignorant question in the whole world, but I'm curious, do you hear a voice in your head? What's just vibration?
Yeah, no, I definitely hear a voice in my head. And I think it's because of the fact that I was raised to learn how to speak. Okay. I think if I had been, I don't know, and I haven't asked this question of someone who is capital D deaf and who doesn't wear hearing aids. I know that they have reported that they dream in sign language, they dream communicating in sign language. So I would also have to guess that maybe they don't have an inner voice that's an auditory one, but perhaps one that is a sign language one. That's just a guess. I don't know that for certain. So that's a big disclaimer there. But for me, I do hear a voice when I'm thinking or reading, and I hear in my dreams as well.
That was going to be one of my questions, so I'm glad you brought it up. I was curious about that. I mean, it makes complete sense. Again, I think there's a disconnect for myself as well, growing up, of this idea that sign language is somehow other. It's a weird thing because you can other a person who's deaf.
Yeah.
That happens because I think that it's perceived a certain way. But then also the idea that this language is somehow other when it's not.
Yeah. Yeah.
I am happy that Like, for example, I did a TikTok when I first had the procedure on my vocal cord. I did a thing. I did it really quickly. I said, hey, this is what's going on. This is my voice. It's going to be several months before it returns to normal, hopefully. Fingers crossed. And I did it. Normally I put captions on my TikToks, and I didn't for this one. And someone in the comments said, hey, I need captions. And I was like, oh, I'm a dick. Of course you do. And so it goes down to this idea of, it's like, yeah, that is a no-brainer. It's just, of course you do. Mm-hmm. And that, what's wrong with it? Just like I interviewed a woman who is blind, and I described what I was wearing and what I looked like before we started the interview. So she had a context in her mind. And it's interesting how we place ideas of things outside of the reality of things for whatever reason. Lack of understanding, bigotry, just confusion, fear.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I think too, what you're touching on is there's almost a fear that I sense it sometimes with some people. There's a fear that they feel like they might say something to offend me or hurt my feelings, or they're not sure if a question is appropriate. And there are definitely, I've talked with deaf and hard of hearing individuals who do get touchy about questions or, things like that. But I've always been appreciative when people ask questions, because I see it as someone trying to get to know me, get to know something that's a part of me, and there's not a lot of information out there. I even, I'll be honest, part of the reason I didn't learn ASL as a child is I felt the stigma so strongly that if I learned ASL, I would be seen as deaf. In fact, I didn't embrace the term deaf until probably 7, 8 years ago, because I was always refer to myself as hard of hearing, because I've lived in two worlds, and I didn't want to think about living in two worlds. I wanted people to see me as, quote unquote normal. And I come to realize that I've only been hurting myself by participating in that stigma and that fear. That's part of why I didn't learn ASL, is I was resistant to learning it because of that stigma of being seen as deaf. Kind of got away from what you were getting at, I think, but
you get to pass through the world on your own terms. Mm-hmm. So if you start to use this external language, mm-hmm. all bets are off. Yeah, exactly. And I've had deaf people come up to me and start signing, and there's a shame on the other side too, where I have to say, I'm so sorry, I don't know how to sign. And they come up with such excitement. Oh, there's someone else in the world who I can speak to, and then I have to let them down. So there's sort of a pain on both sides of the equation there, and that's why I'm really appreciative when people talk about this more with me, when they ask questions. That's how we're going to break down stigma, and make this world a better place for the future generations. And just one more thing on closed captions. I'm so glad that you do that. I'm so glad that even hearing people of the younger generation, Gen Z and now Gen Alpha, I've seen it all over the place, read it all over the place. They love watching with captions on. And that makes me so happy, because it makes it more accessible for everybody, Yeah. To me, there's nothing distracting about captions. In fact, it's helped my daughter learn how to probably read quicker than some of her peers, because we watch with captions on all the time. Yeah, and she can associate. Yeah. Exactly. And when we were at the table during the awards ceremony, where you got all the awards, excitingly so, when I sat down, I realized I could tell by your eye line that you were looking at my mouth. Yes. And I was like, oh, okay. So he reads lips. And mm-hmm. I think I even asked you if that helped. And you said yes. And I knew that we were in such a loud environment. And I became hyper aware that during the conversation at the table, it was really, because I was sitting right next to you. Yeah. It was important for me to turn my body so you could watch my mouth. And it's funny because I do think that people would maybe be put out. Some people might be put out by that. Like, you have to adjust to me instead of the other way around. And I'm saying it's not hard to make a simple adjustment to make sure everybody at the table are experiencing the same thing as best as everyone can. My greatest frustration with the human race is that people, we feel put out by just a little bit of effort to make sure everybody feels okay. Like, that's somehow dirty word now. It's become a dirty word to be aware, and woke is the colloquialism, but to be aware of other human beings around us.
Yeah.
That's a long pontificate into my frustration of that. I get excited when I see, I mean, I'm not hard of hearing. I don't have any issues around auditory. Obviously, I have a vocal cord thing that I was born with. But when I see movies like Coda, or when I see Marley Matlin winning an Oscar, I'm like, fuck yeah. It makes the world smaller. And it's so important for people to see themselves, for people to see someone who's a little different. All of that is so imperative. It makes me so angry that has become vilified. Can things be taken, like, can you get extra? Like, if I had come up to you and been like, oh, let me hold you like a baby. That wouldn't be appropriate.
No.
But that's not what we're talking about.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I so appreciate you saying all that. I mean, and for being aware of how you could help me understand you in that loud environment. Something that I was taught, and this is exactly related to this, something that it was a mind shift for me. When I was casting my film, it was a non-negotiable for me for deaf and hard of hearing characters that they be played by actors who are deaf and hard of hearing. That was never in question. But because I didn't have much experience with the capital E deaf community, and I was fortunate enough to be able to cast Sandra Mae Frank, amazing deaf actress, by the way, and such a sweetheart, like one of the kindest people. I hired her interpreter for our Zoom conversations. And her interpreter, before I ever met with Sandra Mae Frank, said, the reason that I'm hiring her is because she's my accommodation. I don't speak ASL, so I need the interpreter, not her. And that was, and I totally agree, but I had never thought about it like that before. So what we're getting at is, if somebody wants to communicate with me and they would like a response, then sometimes I just need a little bit of assistance in some cases. Sometimes I have to read lips. And like you said, it makes it difficult if someone is talking a different direction and I can't read their lips. I will try to adapt. I mean, because that's what I've done my whole life, is adapt, but I can't always participate. So, I think I understand there's this sort of like human tendency of, not another thing I have to do for somebody else, right? There's that. Life is hard as it is for every person, but we can't live life alone. We need each other. And sometimes some of us need a little bit of accommodation to participate if you want us to participate. And that's the way that I look at it. And, because I've had to adapt my whole life, I don't get offended if someone doesn't accommodate or doesn't realize that I need that accommodation. And sometimes I'll just say, can you please repeat that? I didn't catch it. So sometimes I'll advocate for myself. Yeah, I think what you said is not only completely right, but completely empathetic. And I appreciate that.
Of course. Absolutely. I mean, it seems like a no-brainer, but I remember watching The West Wing, one of the greatest shows ever made. And I remember the first time the character Joey, who is deaf and has an interpreter, and when the character Josh was talking with Joey, and she said, "Look at me," because he kept looking at the interpreter. And she said, "Look at me." And that was such an interesting, I'd never thought about it until that moment. Like, of course, because we're prone to follow the sound.
Yeah.
But they are interpreting it. It's no different, as we said in the beginning, if you went to the United Nations and you were talking with someone from Zimbabwe and they were speaking their native tongue, you wouldn't be looking at the interpreter the whole time. You'd be looking at the dignitary.
Right. Exactly. Exactly.
It was such an interesting moment. And again, I speak to that. This is why things like having this stuff in television and movies is so important.
Absolutely. In that example that you gave, the communication is not happening between the person who hears and the interpreter. The communication is happening between the deaf person and the hearing person that's having the conversation. So, again, it goes back to communication. Interpreters, hearing aids, lip reading, all of the closed captions, all of those things are tools, but the communication happens between people.
Yeah.
And when, the reason that you would look at somebody else is a sign of, I'm communicating with you, a sign of respect, a sign of connection, right? So, yeah, what you said is right on. I haven't seen enough of West Wing to have seen that character. So that's great to know that the character Joey, I think you said, is in there. They are exactly right. And I'm glad that that was such a positive and mind-shifting experience for viewers just like you.
Yeah, it was great. Are those Emmys behind you, by the way?
No, those are Communicator and Telly Awards for a commercial that I did. So
cool. Telly's awesome.
Yeah. So I'm proud, but this is my work environment.
Yeah. You teach at Baylor, correct?
I work at Baylor. I don't teach. I am the associate director of digital strategy for the business school. I got my film degree here because we needed a video production department, and because making films was always a dream for me. It was both, and so I directed and co-wrote a commercial that we shot for the business school a couple of years ago, and that's what that's about.
Sweet. Look at you. You can ask.
Yeah.
Let's get into the film that you that was at Waco, Healing Hands.
Yeah.
You said that it was inspired from childhood, but talk a little bit about the process, what the film is about.
Yeah. It's called Healing Hands, as you said. It's really it's inspired by my childhood, but it's a completely literal story. There are definitely, like the faith healing scene, which, spoiler alert for those who want to see it and haven't seen it, the faith healing scene is as close as I can remember it being, like, with a fictional set of characters, but pretty much almost the exact same scenario, with the exception of the mustard seed, which is physical in the movie, but conceptual when I was a child. It's a 6-year-old boy named Jonah who is struggling at school, is bullied at school. His parents take him to a faith healer, and he, like I did, lied and said that he's healed. He's caught in the lie, and it's sort of an eye-opening experience for the parents. And then the end of the film, which is when Sandra Mae Frank's character comes in, the end of the film, the teacher's sister is deaf, and the teacher knows ASL fluently. And because of witnessing bullying of Jonah in her classroom, she brings in her sister to teach the kids about ASL and about what it means to be deaf. And Jonah finds a new form of healing, and it's in the hands of everybody who can speak ASL. So that's what the story's about. Making it, like I said, was the biggest surprise for me, and the biggest reason why I'm not one of those people that honestly, I really don't care about awards. I know they're sitting out here, but it's for the work appearance or whatever. I really don't care about those awards. I'm not out to be like a world famous film director. Be cool, but that's not what I think I'm here for. I am honestly more excited by people who've seen the film coming up to me and telling me their story, and or telling me this film would be great for someone that I love or someone that I know who is in the same kind of situation. It would mean something to them too. And because of that, it means something to me as a viewer. I am more touched by that experience, and also the experience of the production process, the people who came together and made the film with me, who came alongside this really difficult project, but they resonated with the story. Even people who had no experience with deaf or hard of hearing people, they resonated with the story so much that they were excited about making this film. I did not expect that. I expected them to treat it just like any other job, but they really didn't. And I had made some other films before that, so the difference was palpable for me. So I was honestly healed by that process. As I said earlier, it doesn't feel like a burden to carry that story anymore, because now it's a story that can be shared with many others, and it can do some good, and it has done some good, and that means the world to me. And my ultimate goal is eventually, after it stops having its festival run, maybe premieres online, is being able to share it with parents of deaf and hard of hearing children who are hearing themselves as parents, because that's the situation that my parents were in. This is the situation I was in. And there historically has not been a lot of support, but within the last decade, there has been communities that have sprung up for parents to support each other and bring their kids together. And it brought tears to my eyes when I saw those groups, because that's something I wish I had had as a kid. So, yeah, I hope this film can be shared with people like them.
I hope so too. But I also hope it is seen by people who are in the hearing community as well.
I agree.
The same reasons we've been talking about this whole time, Did you call him Jonah because of the feeling? Yeah.
Jonah and the whale. Yeah. Feeling like I was in the belly of the beast. And honestly, I structured the story in that way too. So it starts in the classroom, goes inside the home, goes in the faith healing scene, which is the center of the story, the belly, if you will, and then he comes back out the other side in reverse order.
Yeah, I love that. I'm a big fan of those sorts of things.
It kind of fell in my lap, once I named him Jonah. I actually named him Jonah because there's a movie called And Your Name is Jonah from the 70s. It's a television movie. And it's about a boy who is deaf, and his parents kind of bring him home from an institution that they had put him in. Trying to reintegrate him into the community was a struggle for all of them, for the boy and the parents. And that movie touched me, the character touched me. So I named him Jonah first after that character. And then it clicked with me, because as a child, I learned about Jonah and the whale, and, I thought of structuring the story in that way as a result of naming the character after that other character. So it was a kind of a serendipitous thing.
What was your parents' reaction when they watched the movie? And then what conversation was facilitated from that?
Yeah, so they supported me the whole way. And I knew it was going to be difficult for them. They have a lot of shame about it, a lot of guilt about it. And I wish, I understand why, but as a parent now, I understand why. But I wish also that as their child, that they can let that go. I've told them many times that, and I told them this after, they were in tears hugging me after watching the movie for the first time, just kind of sobbing in my arms. And I told them many times, you were doing what you were doing anything. You were grasping at straws. You were trying to help because you knew what awaited me in the world, because you knew the stigma. And I don't have to tell them that it wasn't the right choice. They know that now. They felt that after that experience. But their choice came from a place of love, not a place of shame about me, but a place of fear about what the world could do to me growing up. So that's where listening in this world is so important, because on the surface, you could look at someone's actions like that, taking their child to a faith healer and see, oh, that's messed up. Why would you do that to your child? And I can understand and appreciate that perspective. But in my parents' case, the intent was not one of shame about me, but of fear about the world. And that's where listening to their story, listening to others becomes critical, and getting through this world alive and happy.
Yeah, tricky, that, isn't it?
It is.
It's very tricky. When you found out you were having your first child,
Mm-hmm.
did you have thoughts around deafness in regards to your child? Where did that put you in a headspace?
So for me, my wife was a little more concerned about that because she didn't grow up in that environment. She accepts me for who I am, and would accept our child if she happened to be deaf as well. I was not concerned one way or the other, because I knew that if my child turned out to be deaf, I would love them. If they weren't, I would love them. But also, if they did happen to be deaf, if I had had a parent who wore hearing aids, I wouldn't have maybe perceived the stigma, and I would have had somebody who could relate. I would have had somebody who could teach me some things sooner, to get by, and maybe we could learn ASL together at the same time. I could be the child as a parent, almost like a child with them learning ASL. So there was not really any fear on my part. Excitingly, we're expecting in February, so we'll see what happens. A boy this time, and so yay. And so I don't have any fear about it, but what's amazing is the brazenness of some people coming up to us the first time she was pregnant saying, aren't you worried about if your child's going to turn out deaf too? I get where they're coming from. They're coming from a place of probably the same place my parents were in, that fear of, you want what's best for your child. But I don't think they realize how that sounds.
Yeah.
It sounds like you think there's something unhappy about the way that I live.
Sure.
I am just as unhappy or happy as the rest of you. I am not hung up about being deaf. I don't even think about it most of the time, unless I'm made aware of not understanding what somebody says or being in a noisy environment. That's about it.
The good news is, regardless of whether your children are hearing or not hearing, you still can do that thing of learning ASL with them.
Exactly.
You don't have to wait.
Exactly. I don't have to wait. The urgency would be there, to learn it, and making time for it would be critical with a child that is deaf. Because if I had been taught the opportunity to learn both from day one, I could have been a part of a bigger world. I could have been part of the hearing world and the capital D deaf community. From my perspective, a child's life and world only grows bigger when they can learn their primary language, and ASL is their primary language, or English is their primary language, and the other is secondary. It's something that I've thought about in the past, and if hearing parents have if they have questions about that, that's what I would say. Is teach them both
Yeah.
if you can.
I mean, I'm a big fan of teaching kids several languages because, again, makes the world smaller. It's really good for the brain.
Yeah.
It's better at math and music, and all of it is connected.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Jordan, you're awesome. I'm so glad
So are you, Susan.
that I sat next to you at the
Oh,
award ceremony.
thank you. Me too. And thank you also for the kindness of helping me understand what was being said at the table, because it was quite a noisy award ceremony. I could not hear half of what was being said.
Yeah, well, me neither. And I have my hearing. It was very loud in there.
Yeah.
Loud in there. Tell people how they may find you out in the world, and do you have a time frame for the movie going to the outside world? As you and I both know, films have to go through the festivals first.
Yes.
Might be coming to someone's town, so always keep an eye out on film festivals. But how might people find you and your work and all that?
I have a Facebook page called for Healing Hands, so you can search for it there. If you see a little boy on the cover with hearing aids, that in a classroom setting, that's a still from the film, so you're probably on the right page. You can also email me. It's just first and last name at Gmail, or I'm on LinkedIn. I'm really not big into social media personally. Like, I'm just not active on it, but people could reach out to me those ways, and I'm happy to share anything they want to know. But as far as staying in touch with the film and how that's going, that Facebook page will probably be the place to go.
Yeah. And I'll put links on Hey Human Podcast links page to get there easy, so you don't have to go digging around Facebook, which is its own world.
Yeah, it's its own world.
Jordan, thank you so much. This has been great.
Thank you. It's been an honor, and please stay in touch. It's lovely to know you, Susan, and thank you for what you do.
Oh, well, thank you. And absolutely. And I loved Waco. So
come back. Please do.
What a great town. The food was great. The people were great. It was fun walking around. It had all that history and what a cool town.
Absolutely. A shout out to Waco is always appreciated, because if you're just driving past Waco on the interstate, it doesn't look like much. You really have to get off the interstate to experience what Waco really is. It's a lovely town.
Lots of antique stores. I had a ball. I walked around a lot by myself, and I had a really good time. And the food, every place I ate was awesome.
Yeah, Waco is big into restaurants. We have a lot of them, and they're often very good.
That's great. Jordan, thank you. And thank you for listening, everybody. Bye.
Bye.
Rate, review, and subscribe to Hey Human Podcast on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks. Bye.